everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Korean stock market.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got some really cool analysis from Kim Tae-sum. He's the head director at ISF.
Gotcha.
And we're going to be trying to break down what he's seeing in the market.
Awesome.
You know, kind of figure out what's happening with these crazy U.S. tariffs that are coming down.
Right. Yeah, it's a really interesting time to be looking at the Korean markets.
It is.
You know, a lot of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
Investors are kind of, trying to read the tea leaves.
Yeah.
And figure out which way things are going to go.
Definitely. So let's start with a little bit of the big picture here.
Sure.
The KSPE and the KOSDAQ, those are the two major industries in Korea.
Right.
What are we seeing with those right now?
So the KSPE, which tracks the bigger companies in Korea,
right,
that's actually trending upwards.
Okay.
But the KOSDAQ, which is more the tech-heavy index, that's actually down.
That's interesting.
So you're already seeing kind of a difference in how these different segments are being impacted by current events.
For sure.
So it's kind of an interesting thing right off the bat.
It is. And then looking at some of the specific companies, Samsung Electronics is up.
Okay.
SK Hynix is down.
Right.
HD Hyundai Heavy Industries is up significantly, 15%.
Wow.
But then we've got companies like Rainbow Robotics down, Celltrion Healthcare is down, Samcheonang Farm is down. So it's a real mix.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag for sure, and that's really what Kim Tae-sum is emphasizing, is this volatility that we're seeing in the market.
Makes sense.
And he really thinks that the uncertainty around the U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum is one of the major factors that's kind of creating this nervousness.
I would imagine so, yeah. I mean, everybody's trying to figure out how that's going to play out.
Exactly. And what's interesting is he sees a pattern in how the U.S. has kind of negotiated with other countries.
Okay.
When they've been faced with these kind of tariff threats.
Oh, interesting. So like how Australia was able to get a tariff exemption by agreeing to buy U.S. fighter jets.
Exactly.
Or Japan kind of smoothing things over by making big investments in the U.S.
Exactly.
So it's like there's a playbook here.
There's a playbook.
And South Korea's got to figure out how they're going to play the game.
They got to figure out their move.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what he's suggesting, is that South Korea might need to make some strategic moves of its own.
Right.
To kind of avoid getting hit too hard.
And you're already seeing investors trying to figure out, okay, who are going to be the winners and losers here? Let's find the tariff-safe sectors.
Exactly.
Right.
And so that brings us to shipbuilding.
Okay.
Which is an industry that's been getting a lot of attention lately.
Yeah. I mean, South Korea is a global powerhouse in shipbuilding.
They are. Yeah.
And, I mean, it could be a strategically important sector for the U.S.
Absolutely.
Especially as they're thinking about strengthening military alliances and all that.
Absolutely. And so that's what Kim Tae-sum sees, is that shipbuilding is like a potential safe haven.
Okay.
A sector that could actually benefit from these negotiations between the U.S. and Korea.
Interesting.
And there's a sense that it could be a bargaining chip.
I see.
For South Korea.
It's like a chess game.
It's like a chess game.
A little bit, right.
And there's been some positive news on that front, too.
Really? Like what?
So the U.S. Senate is actually considering a bill that would allow allied nations to build U.S. military ships.
Interesting.
So if that bill passes, that would be a huge win for companies like HD Hyundai Heavy Industries.
Right.
They've got incredible shipbuilding technology.
Yeah.
They could be a prime partner for the U.S.
No wonder their stock price is up 15%.
Yeah, exactly. It's all kind of lining up for them.
Yeah.
And it's not just HD Hyundai, right? You're seeing other shipbuilding companies and their suppliers also kind of seeing this wave of optimism.
On a ripple effect?
Like a ripple effect, exactly. Right. And then you have Hanwha Aerospace acquiring Hanwha Ocean's shares.
Wow.
So that's another sign of confidence.
So is that what you're saying? Is that the takeaway here? We should all be running out buying shipbuilding stocks?
Well, not so fast.
Okay.
Kim Tae-sum actually cautions against kind of jumping on the bandwagon of the major shipbuilding companies at this point.
Why is that?
He thinks that a lot of that good news is already baked in to the current stock prices.
Right.
They've already seen those gains. So he's suggesting a little bit more of a strategic,
interesting,
almost a contrarian approach.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's he suggesting?
He recommends looking beyond the obvious players and focusing on the component suppliers.
Interesting.
So the companies that provide the engines, the specialized parts.
So not the big names.
Not the big names.
But the ones that are supplying them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he sees a lot of potential there.
Gotcha.
And he points to kind of a parallel in the defense industry.
Okay.
when you see major defense companies like Hyundai Rotem and Hanwha Aerospace
Right.
doing well, a lot of times their suppliers
Follow suit.
follow suit.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. So you see companies like i3 System Chemco, aerospace benefiting from that.
So instead of chasing the big names that everyone's talking about, we should be looking for the companies in their supply chain.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it. But how do you even go about finding those?
Right. Well, he actually has a specific company in mind.
Okay, lay it on me.
He highlights KSP.
KSP.
It's a lesser-known supplier
Okay.
that specializes in engine components.
I gotta admit, I've never even heard of KSP.
And that's exactly why he sees it as an opportunity.
Oh, interesting.
They've got strong ties to HD Hyundai Heavy Industries,
Right.
which, as we discussed, is poised for growth.
Okay.
So, he's saying don't just follow the crowd. Do
Right.
your own research. Look for those under-the-radar players.
I like that philosophy.
Yeah,
I'm definitely adding KSP to my research list.
good.
Now we gotta talk about the elephant in the room.
Oh, yeah.
In the Korean stock market.
Which is
Biopharma.
biopharma, yeah.
I mean, interest rates are rising globally.
They are.
There's a lot of concern about how that's going to impact these companies.
Absolutely. There's a lot of concern.
Right.
But Kim Tae-sung kind of offers a more nuanced perspective.
Okay.
He acknowledges that interest rates are a factor,
Yeah.
but he urges investors to look beyond the headlines and focus on the fundamentals.
Okay, so it's not a blanket sell on biopharma.
No, definitely not.
Right.
He's encouraging investors to really dig deeper
Gotcha.
and look for those companies that have
Right.
strong pipelines of promising drugs,
Okay.
potential partnerships with those global pharmaceutical giants, the big pharma.
The ones that are going to, really make some breakthroughs.
Exactly. And he actually uses the example of
Olic.
which is a Korean biopharma company.
Yeah.
And, remember their stock surge?
Yeah.
After they landed that massive deal with Eli Lilly,
All right.
the deal was worth way more than Olix's entire market cap at the time.
Wow.
So it just shows you how a single deal
Right.
can completely change the game for a company.
Even in a challenging environment.
Even in a challenging environment, exactly.
Right.
And he thinks that there are other potential Olix out there.
Oh,
He
interesting.
points to Petron as a possibility.
Peptron.
They have similar technology to Olix.
Okay.
They're seen as a potential candidate for a major partnership,
Gotcha.
although their stock has already experienced some gains.
Okay, so maybe not as under the radar.
Maybe not as under the radar,
Right.
He also highlights A2A Pharma,
A2A Pharma.
which is a company that's attracting attention for their platform technology.
Okay, hold on. I'm not a biopharma expert.
Right.
What does platform technology mean?
So in simple terms, it means that they have a core technology
Okay.
that can be applied to develop multiple drugs,
Gotcha.
not just a single product.
Right.
So it gives them the potential to create a whole pipeline of new treatments.
Oh, I see. So they're not just betting on one horse.
Exactly.
They've got multiple things going on.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so he sees potential for them to, to break through their previous highs,
Yes.
with their technology and the right partnership.
Okay.
Um,
What about some of the big names in Korean biopharma, like Samsung Biologics?
Right.
I mean, are they worth considering?
So he sees Samsung Biologics as a solid long-term investment
Okay.
in the sector.
Okay.
He thinks that they has the size, the resources, and the expertise
Right.
to kind of weather any short-term storms.
So if their stock dips because of,
Right.
interest rate fears or whatever, that might be a buying opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
He's saying don't let short-term noise distract you from the long-term
I
potential.
like it.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've covered a lot here.
we have.
We've talked about shipbuilding as a potential safe haven from these tariffs.
Right.
We've talked about the nuances of biopharma investing in a rising interest rate environment.
Right.
Found a potential hidden gem in KSP.
Yeah, that's right.
But there's one more sector that we need to talk about.
That's
in
fair.
capturing headlines worldwide.
Which is
The space industry.
the space
The
industry.
final frontier.
The final frontier.
Right, and this is like synonymous with long-term growth potential.
It is.
But how does Korea fit into this global space race?
That's a great question, and one that Kim Tae-sung addresses directly.
Okay.
He's actually quite bullish
Really?
on the space industry.
Interesting.
I
mean, hasn't Korea had kind of some setbacks?
Yeah, they have had challenges in the past
Right.
with their space program.
A few high-profile ones.
There have been, some
Right.
few issues along the way.
Yeah.
But he points to the impressive performance of companies like Rocket Lab as evidence that the space industry is maturing and becoming less reliant on government funding.
So this is the U.S. company Rocket Lab?
Yes.
Okay.
And what's important to note here is that Rocket Lab's success isn't based on hype.
Right.
You know, they've got the numbers to back it up.
Okay.
Solid revenue growth, a growing backlog of orders, the real deal.
So they're the real deal.
They're the real deal, yeah.
Interesting.
And it's a stark contrast to some other sectors like robotics, which are often kind of overvalued.
Yeah, driven by speculation.
And driven by speculation, exactly.
Okay, so he's saying Rocket Lab is the real deal.
Yeah.
And that's a sign that the space industry is becoming more commercially viable.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not just about launching satellites anymore.
Right.
Rocket Lab is also expanding into the medium to heavy launch market.
Wow. So that's going to intensify the competition with SpaceX.
It could.
Right.
It could.
Yeah, and accelerate innovation.
Exactly.
Right. That's a really interesting development.
It is a really interesting development.
Okay, so he's excited about the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
How does that translate to Korea specifically?
Right. So that's where things get a little bit more nuanced.
Okay.
He acknowledges that there have been disappointments in the past with Korea's space ambitions.
Right.
But he sees real potential for growth.
Okay.
And he points out that a lot of the Korean companies that are involved in the space sector also have a strong presence in defense.
Oh, so they've got a more diversified revenue stream.
Exactly.
Which provides a little stability.
It does.
Right.
And he highlights Korea Aerospace Industries.
AI.
Or KAI. That is a key player to watch.
So they're mostly known for their fighter jets, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's actually part of the reason why their performance hasn't been as stellar as some of the other defense companies lately.
Interesting.
He attributes that to the global shift in demand.
Okay.
Away from fighter jets and towards more ground-based weaponry.
Interesting.
So they've kind of been focused on a sector that's not as hot right now.
Right.
But the key point is he thinks that KAI is well-positioned to capitalize on the growing interest in the space industry.
So even though they've lagged behind in the past, he sees them as a potential leader in the future.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
So for those who are intrigued by the Korean space industry, who else should we be paying attention to?
Besides KAI.
Besides KAI, he recommends two specific companies, SatTrek Initiative and HVM.
SatTrek Initiative.
And HVM.
Okay, tell me more.
So SatTrek Initiative is a leader in Earth observation satellites.
Okay.
They've got a strong track record, a solid reputation. Their stock performance has been excellent.
So that SatTrek Initiative is all about satellites?
Satellites, yeah.
Okay, what about HVM?
So HVM is a specialty metal company that supplies materials to SpaceX.
Wow.
Among other high-tech industries.
So they're directly linked to SpaceX.
They are.
That's a pretty impressive connection.
It is, yeah.
It's almost like a tale of two approaches here.
Yeah.
You've got SatTrek Initiative with their specialized expertise in satellites.
Right.
And then you've got HVM, which is more diversified, supplying materials to multiple industries, including SpaceX.
Exactly.
Okay.
But
let's be honest. The space industry is exciting, but it can also be incredibly volatile.
It can be.
I mean, it's a long-term game with a lot of unknowns.
A lot of unknowns, and especially given all the global turmoil that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the tariffs, you've got all these geopolitical tensions.
Right.
I mean, it's enough to make anyone nervous.
It is, yeah.
Do you really think it's a safe haven for investors?
You bring up a valid point.
Right.
The space industry, it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
Right.
But Quintesa, even with all that uncertainty, he's firmly in the buy the dip camp.
Really?
When it comes to space.
Interesting.
He sees those dips, especially the ones that are caused by unrelated market fears like the tariffs.
Right.
He sees those as opportunities.
Oh, so he's saying, like, don't panic if you see a space company's stock drop because of some, trade war news or whatever.
Exactly.
Stay focused on the long-term potential.
Stay focused on the fundamentals of the space industry.
Okay.
And I think what makes him so confident is that...
Yeah, what is it?
It's not just about the commercial potential of space, which is huge.
It is. I mean, it's massive.
It's massive, but it's also about the strategic importance.
Oh, okay.
Look at what's happening in Ukraine.
Right.
SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet service has basically become a lifeline for Ukrainians during the conflict.
It's amazing how that technology, which seems so sci-fi,
right,
is now playing such a vital role in a real-world conflict.
Exactly. I mean, it's straight out of a Tom Clancy novel.
Yeah, it really is.
And that's why he's so bullish on the sector.
Right.
He believes that space is no longer a luxury.
Okay.
It's a necessity.
Wow.
And he actually goes so far as to say that every portfolio should have at least one space industry stock.
You know, I've always been hesitant to invest in space companies.
Yeah.
It always felt so speculative.
I can understand that.
So far out there, literally.
Right.
But hearing you explain his rationale, it's starting to make more sense to me.
Yeah.
It's not just about potential profits.
Right.
It's about investing in a technology that's really shaping the future of humanity.
Exactly. And I think that's what he's trying to get across. He's not just giving us stock tips.
Right.
He's challenging us to think differently about the world.
It's a good point.
And how we invest in it.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive.
It has been.
We've explored the Korean stock market from so many different angles, uncovered some potential investment opportunities.
Absolutely.
Even debunked some of my own preconceived notions about the space industry.
Good.
So let's do a really quick recap for our listeners just to make sure they're walking away with the key takeaways here.
Sounds good.
So we started by talking about those looming U.S. tariffs.
Right.
And how they're impacting the Korean market.
Right.
Creating a lot of uncertainty, but even within that uncertainty, Kim Tae-sung sees opportunity.
He does.
Right.
He's encouraging investors to look for the sectors that could benefit.
Like shipbuilding.
Right,
exactly.
And even within shipbuilding, he's recommending we focus on the component suppliers.
Right, not the big names.
Right.
The ones that are supplying them.
And of course, we can't forget about KSP.
KSP, that's right.
That little hidden gem.
The engine component supplier.
Right. And then, of course, we discussed biopharma, which is facing headwinds from those rising interest rates.
Yeah.
But even there, he's advising a nuanced approach.
Exactly.
He's not saying abandon biopharma altogether.
Right. Instead, he's saying, look for the companies that have strong pipelines, potentially partnerships with big pharma, and maybe some of that really disruptive platform technology.
Like A2A Pharma.
A2A Pharma.
Right.
And of course, for those with a long-term outlook,
right.
he sees Samsung Biologics as a really solid bet.
Yeah.
It's amazing how he balances that optimism with caution.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to highlight the risks, but he's also encouraging us to look past the headlines.
Exactly.
And focus on those fundamentals.
It's a good lesson for any investor.
It really is.
Regardless of experience level.
Right. And then to top it all off, we talked about the space industry.
That's right. The final frontier.
Which I used to think of as incredibly risky and speculative.
Right.
But he makes a compelling argument for why space is no longer just a dream. Right. It's a necessity.
It's becoming essential.
Right. And the fact that Rocket Lab is having so much success really proves that these space companies can generate real revenue.
Real businesses.
Yeah, and they can build these sustainable businesses.
And he sees Korea as a potential player.
Right.
In this growing space economy.
Right.
And he highlighted Korea Aerospace Industries, KAI, as a company that could benefit, and SatTrek Initiative and HVM as those two kind of specialist plays.
It's amazing how he connects all these seemingly disparate trends and insights into this coherent narrative.
He does a good job of that.
It's like he's not just analyzing individual companies.
Right.
He's painting a picture of the future.
He's giving us a roadmap.
So for you, our listener, the question is, what are you going to do with this information?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
How are you going to apply these insights to your own investment strategy?
That's the question.
Right. Are you going to seize the opportunities in shipbuilding's supply chain?
Right.
Are you going to dive deeper into that world of biopharma breakthroughs?
Or maybe take a leap of faith.
Or maybe you're ready to take that leap.
And invest in the final frontier.
And invest in the final frontier of the space industry.
Exactly.
The choice is yours.
But whatever you decide.
Do
your research,
stay informed, and never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been a whirlwind of information and insights. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Korean stock market.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, happy investing.
Happy investing.
You know, it's amazing to me.
What's that?
Just how much we've managed to cover in this deep dive. I mean, we've gone from geopolitical chess matches to cutting-edge biopharma to the race to space.
It really is a testament to how dynamic the Korean market is.
It's anything but boring.
Not boring at all, no.
And it really shows how interconnected everything is these days.
It does. You know what happens in one corner of the world can have a huge impact on investors in a completely different part of the world.
And that's what I really appreciate about Kim Tae-sung's analysis.
What's that?
He's not just giving us a bunch of stock picks.
Right.
He's really helping us understand these broader forces.
The big picture.
Yeah, the big picture that's shaping the market.
The trends, the geopolitical landscape, all of that.
Exactly. And he's doing it both in Korea and globally.
That's right. He's not just focused on one little corner of the market.
So for our listeners out there, I hope this has been a valuable deep dive.
I hope so, too.
That sparked some new ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe giving you some leads to follow up on.
Some companies to research.
Right. Because at the end of the day, investing is a journey.
It is a journey, not a destination.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. And the more informed you are, the better.
Couldn't agree more.
Well said. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Korean stock market.
My pleasure.
Until next time, happy investing, everyone.
10.515.